Joining in the festivities but continuing the call for change. Among the thousands ringing in the new year on France's Champs-Élysées were members of the anti-government Yellow Vest movement. In a televised New Year's speech, Emmanuel Macron said they would not persuade his government to abandon its economic agenda. A good relationship with the US would be welcome, but North Korea ready to go another way if sanctions are not lifted. A warning from Kim Jong-un in his New Year's speech, in which he expresses frustration at the lack of progress since he met Donald Trump last year. And taking hundreds of pictures of a space rock while travelling at 36,000 miles an hour, NASA's unmanned New Horizons mission goes a billion miles beyond Pluto in the quest of clues about how our solar system and planets were formed. In a few hours, its data should be reaching Earth. Hello and a very happy new year to you. I'm Eve Irvine. Well, a night of celebration, not unrest. Members of the so-called Yellow Vest protest here in France joined tens of thousands of tourists and revellers on the Champs-Élysées in Paris to ring in the new year, with a promise that the movement will continue. As he made his New Year's Eve address, the French president acknowledged the need for improved public services, but also said the protests would not prompt his government to move away from planned reforms. He criticised the violence that's occurred at many of the demonstrations.
Some people use the pretext of speaking on behalf of the people. Which people? From where? How? Really, they are nothing but a megaphone for an angry mob, railing against elected representatives, the police, journalists, Jews, foreigners, homosexuals. That, quite simply, is the negation of France. Because we are a state with rule of law. The order of the Republic will be ensured without fail.
Well, meanwhile, here's a listen to some of the Yellow Vest protesters who say that they were not impressed by Macron's speech and that their movement is far from over.
We don't expect anything from him. He didn't add anything to what he already said mid-December.
He's enthralled by money, by the rich, but his speech was worth absolutely nothing.
In favour of good relations with the United States, but ready to go a different way if sanctions are not lifted. North Korea's Kim Jong-un had a warning for Washington in his New Year's speech, in which he expressed frustration with the lack of progress in negotiations since Kim and the US president met last year. Alison Sargent reports.
Starting off 2019 with a warning. In his New Year's address, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un said that he is ready to meet with President Trump again at any time, but also threatened to take another path.
If the United States continues to break its promises and misjudges our patience by unilaterally demanding certain things and pushes ahead with sanctions and pressure against our republic, then we may have to seek another way to protect our country's sovereignty and interest and establish peace and stability.
It was the leader's 2018 New Year's address that kicked off a year of easing tensions. 3 meetings with the South Korean President Moon Jae-in and a historic summit with US President Donald Trump, at which the two leaders signed a vague agreement toward denuclearization. Since then, the North has become frustrated that the US hasn't lifted sanctions, even after North Korea took initial steps, halting its missile tests and blowing up nuclear test sites. But the US is waiting to lift its sanctions until it confirms that North Korea's denuclearization is full and final. Satellite images have suggested ongoing activity at the North's nuclear and weapons facilities. The US has made some concessions, suspending joint military drills with South Korea. With his demands, Kim did say that the North would cease producing, testing, and spreading its nuclear arsenal. Ultimately, a second US-North Korea meeting could be in the cards for 2019. Just over a week ago, Donald Trump tweeted that he is looking forward to his next summit with Kim. The North Korean leader also has agreed to make his first ever visit to the South Korean capital, expected to take place this year.
Internet connections in Democratic Republic of Congo have slowed down or in some areas been entirely cut. No explanation being offered as to why. The blackout started as polling stations began sending results of presidential elections to compilation centres. Partial results in those votes are expected this Tuesday, with all candidates confident they're going to come out on top. Here's how locals are reacting, however, to the internet outage.
It's annoying because it's the holidays. We have friends and relatives abroad. We need the internet to communicate with them. But because they cut the networks, we can't get in touch.
I heard that apparently people were putting up the election results online. So if they cut off the internet access because of that, well, they are the government. They should know how to stop this without cutting off everybody.
A new year and a new president for Brazil, Jair Bolsonaro, is being inaugurated this Tuesday. Amid high security, the ceremony is to be attended by dozens of foreign dignitaries. Bolsonaro wants to break with decades of centre-left rule. On the eve of his inauguration, he once again vowed to make gun possession a lot easier for adults and to fight what he called the Marxist trash being taught in schools. Lucinda Elliott in Brazil tells us more.
Security ahead of the event has been unprecedented. We've had fighter jets deployed to the sky and also over 3,000 civil and military police that will be guarding today's events. They're expecting as many as 300,000 people to make their way to watch the historic ceremony. What we'll have today is a series of events that includes a move from the cathedral in Brasilia through a parade, which is normally in an open-top Rolls-Royce car, make its way to the presidential palace, where then, after a congressional session, Bolsonaro will come out to give a historic address to the nation.
Well, Bolsonaro is a former paratrooper who's openly nostalgic for Brazil's military dictatorship that ruled from the mid-60s to the 80s. He was elected with 55% of the vote, leaving the country divided. Catherine Osborne reports.
The election of Jair Bolsonaro caused conflict inside many Brazilian families. 26-year-old Gabriel Cassar is angry with his uncles and grandparents. It started with a social media post in which the leftist journalist gave reasons not to vote for the far-right candidate.
Here is the post that caused the disagreement. I said, no, uncle, it's a lie. You should check your information.
Gabriel comes from a middle-class military family, and his grandmother was so angry she stopped paying for his health insurance. He did not expect that kind of revenge.
I cannot remember any time in a previous election when there was such great hatred. This time, it was not only, I do not agree with you, but I cannot stand your existence. This time, it's not an opposition of classes, but of values.
In 30 years of democratic elections, Brazilian society has never been so polarized. A short presidential campaign of unprecedented verbal and physical violence heightened tensions between friends and colleagues. After the president's inauguration, this group of restaurant workers is planning a pro versus anti-Bolsonaro football match. Recent corruption accusations against Bolsonaro, who promised clean politics, have changed the tone of discussions.
He earns 8,000 euros a month, has more than 25 million in his account. How does he justify that?
Who?
Bolsonaro.
But what are you saying? It's not him.
In the campaign, Bolsonaro benefited from social division. Public debate was fueled by political ads and fake news, and these friends even stopped talking to each other.
We played a lot during the campaign. It's like football. We're fighting on the pitch, but once it's over, we're all friends, and we're going to have a barbecue.
Several companies even banned political messages on clothing and in chat groups. Still, Bolsonaro's controversial policy plans will likely make tensions flare again.
Let's take a look now at some other news in brief. A landslide triggered by torrential rains in Indonesia has left at least 5 people dead and 38 others missing on the main island of Java. The mud that slid down hills Monday evening buried around 30 homes. Counter-terrorism police in the United Kingdom are investigating a stabbing in Manchester. 3 people, including a police officer, were wounded after being attacked at a railway station in the city. Their injuries are serious but not thought to be life-threatening. A male suspect has been arrested. And 85 members of the former Colombian guerrilla movement, the FARC, have been killed since the rebel group signed a peace deal 2 years ago. That's according to the UN. According to the state's Special Investigation Unit, those responsible for the killings are criminal gangs, mostly linked to drug trafficking. Now, a tiny, extremely distant world is coming into view this Tuesday. NASA's unmanned New Horizons spaceship flying by a cosmic rock, a relic from the early days of our solar system, and it's been taking hundreds of pictures of it, pictures that could help scientists understand a bit more about the origin of other planets. New Horizons is travelling at a speed of 32,000 miles an hour and had to capture those pictures from a distance of over 2,000 miles away. It should be another few hours before the data captured can be downloaded here on Earth, but here's a quick listen to some of those involved in that historic flyby.
This is space history. No object has been explored up close this far from Earth. What happens next is the data will start to come back. We'll see tomorrow, 20 months for data from Ultima to ultimately reach Earth, and for the entire package, for the science team to begin looking over just this treasure trove of information, of data, in what is literally an archaeological dig into the beginnings of the solar system. These are objects that have been literally untouched, believed to be unaffected since they were formed in this outside region of the solar system.
Well, finally, before we leave you, a look at how 2019 is being greeted around the world. Torrential rains in New York did not dampen spirits there as the sphere dropped in Times Square. From Sydney to Paris, Camille Nedelec takes us on a tour of the fireworks and light shows.
The Australians ring in the new year with their biggest ever fireworks display over the iconic Sydney Harbour. In Karachi, in Pakistan, people gathered at the Port Grand.
The message for today is basically you have to keep in peace.
In Pyongyang, in North Korea, crowds gathered to watch song and dance, as well as the fireworks. While in South Korea, 100,000 people celebrated the New Year with a traditional bell-tolling ceremony in Seoul. The celebrations were also a chance to reflect on hopes for the year ahead.
The relationships between North and South Korea have been improved in 2018. I hope we can keep this good atmosphere in 2019, so that we can be more peaceful and closer to the reunification.
Hong Kong's iconic Victoria Harbour was lit up, and Bangkok's stunning display was held over the Chao Phraya River. In Dubai, after last year's fireworks were cancelled due to security concerns, they made up for lost time. And in Moscow, the freezing conditions didn't cool the crowd's enthusiasm. Berlin ushered in the new year with one of Europe's biggest street parties between the Brandenburg Gate and the Victory Column. The theme in Paris was fraternity, and in amongst the crowd, some festive yellow vests. And London celebrated its relationship with Europe ahead of Brexit. The message: London is open.
Londyn jest otwarty.
Londres, ville ouverte. Well, wherever you are watching us from, we wish you a very happy and healthy New Year. That's it for this edition. Do take care.
You might watch France 24 in English, but don't forget, France 24 is also broadcast in French, Arabic, and Spanish.
Muy buenas tardes, bienvenidos a las noticias de France 24.
Available on cable and satellite systems and online media in France and around the world.